So what is up, guys? You got your boy Stingren here today, and today we are doing our first collab unit review in Artery Gear Fusion, and that is going to be for Ryza, or as we say, Ryza. And we're going to talk about her builds, her gear, how she performs in PvP PvE, and of course my overall opinions of the unit. And if you guys could do me a huge favor, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this video. That will definitely help push this video up. And of course, it would be great to see some new faces on the channel. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Ryza skill 1 is a basic 2-hit attack skill that does inflict a status called Mark to one enemy. When an enemy is marked, they take 50% more damage from Ryza and your allies, which is a really nice way to get some extra damage, especially when she does have an extra utility that does help with buffing damage, and that's going to be something that we talk about with her S2, which is really good. As a sense, it really does combo very well with her S2, which is again a very solid thing. So, but for the most part, it's mostly just something you can use for a little bit extra damage for your teammates. So overall, not a bad skill, and it's still something that can be used. Admittedly, I feel like this is where she shines the most with her S2. Her S2 is a unique passive that takes a slot of a attacking skill, so it means you cannot use it in battle, it just triggers on its own. So what it does is, it allows Ryza to take 30% of damage to your slot 1 party member. So whoever's in your first slot in your team, then she will take 30% of that damage, as well as a little bit of a damage sharing gimmick, which is really nice. The concept behind it is that it's a little bit more of a double-edged sword, because, well, essentially this could put Ryza in danger, and Ryza is a pretty valuable unit to have in a team because of the second effect of this skill. What this does is, whenever allies are attacked or whenever Ryza can gain energy, she will then trigger a follow-up when her energy reaches 100. And this is pretty easy to trigger depending on the circumstances of the fight. If you're going against something that has AoE, then you're going to get those counters basically every turn. But if it's single target, it may take you a little bit longer depending on, what happens within the fight. But prime examples of PvE content like Iron Maiden, Ryza can practically counter almost every single turn, which is really good. However, the downside is that of course Ryza is taking damage as well. So if you're not bringing someone like a healer like Morris or something, then that could potentially put her in danger as well. You do want to keep Ryza around because of that follow-up effect. The follow-up effect is a 70% defense break with a 50% chance of proccing on all enemies, and that is pretty good because that means it's super easy to start chipping enemies down. It's super easy to start getting those big kills, especially if you're running an AoE team of your own, like AoE DPS. So that's really good. I do think that this skill 2 is probably her best passive. I say passive because it's not really a damaging skill outside of the follow-up rather, but I will say that this is definitely one of the better ones for her kit. Ryza's S3 is also pretty nice as well. I do think Ryza's S3 is really nice because of the simple fact that you can preventively stop certain enemies from buffing like crazy. This is really good because, well, her S3 does give a buff block and an HP recovery block for 2 turns. This is really good for PvE, but it's selectively good in PvP. It really just depends on the type of matchups that you have. For example, if you're a Ryza that happens to go before Alice, which usually won't happen because you're not going for speed, then you can potentially stop an Alice from going for her S2 on an ally to give them extra attack and giving them extra effects and stuff. So that's really nice because that's a really good way to stop something from happening. But again, it's not really something you immediately see as much. It's just one of those nice little extra utility things that does help Ryza stand out as a character, and overall it's not a bad skill. For skill priority, I would definitely say you should prioritize maxing your S2 because you definitely want to get as much damage as you can with her counter or her follow-up, depending on what you want to call it. Her S3 because it is one of her only AoE damaging skills, and the S1 for your final recommendation. For PvE, I do feel Ryza is definitely a solid unit to be used because of the fact that she does have an AoE defense down. That's really good for some of the more pestering and annoying boss stages that have more than one enemy. Prime examples being Iron Maiden, because that way you can get a really good way of getting rid of the subs really quickly without having to burn one and stuff like that. And the really good thing about this is that I didn't really touch on with the skill 2 is how consistent her counter is. It's very consistent, and it puts her just a little bit over most AoE defense breakers because of how cooldowns work. When you use a skill, it's usually triggered by some type of cooldown, whether it be like 4, maybe 3 turns, and then you just are stuck without it. Since Ryza's skill 2 follow-up is not triggered to a countdown, or a cooldown rather, then you can just simply keep inflicting that defense down. You continuously keep inflicting that to make sure it either becomes refreshed or reapplied, and that becomes very, very consistent without having to worry about any sort of cooldown. So for PvE, she's actually pretty good because she can do what she needs to do in those certain fights while just simply being herself. And of course, the buff block and the recovery null is also a very good one. Again, cough cough for Iron Maiden. She's very good for Iron Maiden. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm sure a lot of people have already said it, but she's very, very good for Iron Maiden. She's basically built to counter Iron Maiden in every simple way, which is really cool, by the way. But there's that. For PvP, I would actually say she's actually pretty good in PvP. The reason why is because she is one, an AoE defense breaker, which is still really good. I keep stressing this out enough because AoE defense break without a cooldown is pretty insane, especially when you are able to just pick who you want to nuke, especially if you're not in a situation where your teammates go first and then she's able to trigger a follow-up. If, for example, someone's running a faster Alice than yours, they start with an S3 instead of S2, which has happened to me a few times before, then essentially your Ryza can follow up with a counter, and then that's just a chance of getting the defense down if she's able to hit that effect. And then you can basically just pick someone on her team just to die when your DPS starts to go, or when Ryza herself goes, because she is considered a DPS within her build. So that's very good. I do think that that's actually a very valuable thing about her. If you are going to consider taking her to high level PvP, then maybe consider taking her UE up to 20. If you are unable to spend, then do not worry about it, because you need to do 110 pulls. As a free to play, I don't really recommend you should do 110 pulls to get the level 20 UE. I would just simply say just take her up to 19, which is a completely doable thing within step all the way up to step 90 if you are to pity, but you can still get her up to 19 even if you only do 40 pulls and you get your rise up within the 40. So just simply do your pulls, get the stuff from the second part of the collab, which comes out next week, and you should be able to get her to 19. But if you spend just a little bit more, then you will be able to get her up to 20, and what doing the 20 does, it basically gives her a little bit more efficient with her energy gains. So that's really just it. It's just better chances for her follow-up to trigger, which is just admittedly the best thing about that. But in short, Ryza is a really good unit. She's actually pretty darn solid with her AoE defense break, but of course a lot of people are going to be more so laser focused on the next unit, and that's going to be Lila, who comes out next week. But if you have some free summons lying around and you just want to try the unit yourself and you're like, well, maybe she could be somebody that helps my account out, then I would recommend actually pulling for Ryza. She's not bad. She's pretty solid, I feel. But anyway, this has been your boy Stingren. I'll see you guys next time. Peace, and make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe.